Did you know that the iTunes Music Store was launched almost exactly 20 years ago on August 28th, 2003? This was huge news because it was the first digital platform that sold songs from all major recording labels at the time. Now, that doesn't mean much for mobile gaming specifically, but without the success of iTunes Music, we would never get the App Store, which was launched later in 2008. But anyway, that's a digression, and we'll talk about the App Store some more in July. But for now, let's get into this week's episode. So one thing that I like to do every once in a while is go back through the internet archives and try and work out what people were talking about at around this time in history. And so I have 3 headlines that I found quite interesting that I'm going to pull up on my screen here, and I'll make sure that you guys can see as well. And the first one is some sales data that is otherwise not interesting to anyone except for some data analysts. But what this shows is that in 2009, 40% of people had a Nokia phone. Around 21 had Research in Motion, which was BlackBerry at the time, and about 11 had an Apple iPhone. And so, of course, right away, I wanted to compare that to what the numbers look like today. And so the second graph shows that in 2022, by the end of the year, Samsung had sold the most devices at 21%, Apple is sitting at 18%, but if you look at the others, Nokia, BlackBerry, HTC, Motorola and the others are nowhere to be found. And that's kind of it. There is no moral to this story. I just found it quite interesting. I know that I had a Nokia phone that I probably still have in a drawer somewhere, and if I turned it on, I'm pretty sure it would still work, but Nokia is just not a brand that you see around anymore. The other headline, which I'm going to pull up now, is from 2011, and it's that Apple doesn't accept App Store reviews for games that were obtained through a promo code. Now, this is just something interesting because most people don't actually know this. If a developer generates a promo code through iTunes Connect, and then someone redeems that code, they cannot put a review on the App Store for that game. At the time, this was done so that developers wouldn't give out promo codes in exchange for favorable reviews. But of course, nowadays every game is free, so this doesn't matter anyway, but the policy is still in place. Now, this last one is just a bit of interesting trivia. Did you know that in 2019, Apple themselves released a game that lasted only for about a week? The game was called Warren Buffett's Paper Wizard, and it was just a simple affair that could be done in a few minutes, where you throw papers at houses along a paper route, and you get graded on how many you deliver and how accurate you are. But what's really interesting is that it made a lot of people furious. Many saw it as Apple wasting time and resources, or pandering to one of their biggest investors. And maybe there is some truth to that, but the game was free and seemed kinda fun, but it only lasted for about a week before it was removed from the App Store. But anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get to talking about some games, shall we? For this month of May, Apple just released 20 games onto the Apple Arcade. This includes 4 brand new arcade originals and about 16 games which are some of the best games on the App Store. The originals are What the Car, which comes from the makers of What the Golf, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action roguelike, Disney Spellstruck, which looks like Scrabble with power-ups to me, and Cityscapes, which looks like a very interesting and competent city builder. Now, unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to check out the new games yet, but from the others, I would recommend playing Limbo, which I think everybody knows about at this stage, and Kingdom Two Crowns. Two Crowns is a side-scrolling pixel art game that's part resource management and part strategy. I would describe it kind of as high-level micromanagement. It's one of those games where the mystery of the world is just as compelling as the rest of the gameplay, especially early on when you're discovering how everything works. I've had a lot of fun with it and I highly recommend it. So, my apologies, I'm recording this part later in the day because I forgot to mention a game that I introduced in the introduction to this video. Leia's Horizon, from the people that made Alto's Adventure and Alto's Odyssey, came out under Netflix Games, which means that you can play it for free with a Netflix subscription. The core concept of the game is pretty simple. You start off somewhere high, then you jump off and you glide with your cape to wherever you want. What makes the game kind of magical is just that exploration, where you see something on the horizon, jump off the mountain and you fly straight towards it. And maybe you'll find an NPC there, maybe you'll find a challenge, maybe you'll find a bird you can scare off. The controls were a little bit hard to get and I still sometimes have trouble, but that's more on me than on the game, because as soon as you get into it, all of that falls away and you're in a beautiful world full of wonder and things to see and explore, and I love that. In other news, I've been playing two games quite obsessively for the past week or so. The first is Super Meat Boy Forever, which came out about 2 weeks ago. And mind you, this is the endless runner platformer thing, not the usual platformers where you have full control. It works really well on mobile, and I'm a sucker for games that are really hard but fair and rewarding, and I've been playing and replaying the levels in this one to perfect them over and over again. The other game is also super tough, but for a different reason. It's called Traffic City Rush, and it's one of my favorite games on the App Store. It's a simple game where all you do is you control the flow of traffic by toggling streetlights. Simple, right? Except in the later levels, it actively asks you to think about multiple things at the same time. Which sounds stressful, but when it works, it really puts you in this zen-like flow state, where you feel like a mastermind in charge of this perfect web. I'm not entirely sure why I went back to play it, other than it's been a while and I felt like playing it again. But it's another game that I would highly recommend that you check out. Anyway, that's all I have for you this week. If you watched this far, thank you for tuning in and hanging out. This is the first video of its kind that I'm going to publish to YouTube, but I'm pretty keen to keep making them and refining them more and more as the time goes on, and I hope you join me for the ride. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye!